Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to the one and only Manic Noize podcast. Turn it up.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Manic Noize podcast. This one is killer. I've got Devin motherfucking Townsend on the line. I've been a fan of his work, whether it be Strapping Young Lad, his solo work, Ziltoid, the Devin Townsend band, the Devin Townsend project. I mean, Jesus, where do you want to start? It was an awesome chat. We talked a lot about mental health, which was cool. Talked a lot about Dev re-embracing the heavy side of his music in recent times, and also the decision to go out and do an acoustic tour after recording the Empath album. So, a lot of shit in there. Please, if you enjoy it, subscribe to the podcast. There's plenty more episodes with plenty more fun. Dudes from Anthrax, Under Oath. Fuck, who else is in there? Tech Nine, the rapper, Wiggity Wiggity, I'm Getting Jiggity, and a bunch of cool comedians as well.
Podcast initiation complete. Warning. This episode may cause brain damage.
Hey, this is Trevor Sternat from the Black Dahlia Murder here. You're listening to the Manic Noize podcast.
Hey, Hayden, this is Devin.
Hey, Devin, how you doing, man?
Good, buddy. Is this the number to call you on?
This is the one, yeah. Thank you.
No problem, man.
It's great to talk to you. I mean, you've got this tour coming up of Australia, the acoustic tour coming in September. You've just released Empath, which is a really ambitious solo album, and the reaction's been pretty much unanimously positive. What was this experience like with the new album, approaching it as a true solo album compared to your previous album, Transcendence, with the Devin Townsend project?
Well, to start off with Transcendence, as well as anything else that I've done in the past with my name in it or strapping, was still predominantly written by me. The process that I incorporated with Transcendence with the band was really about starting to figure out how to incorporate other people's styles into the sonic fingerprint. There were a couple songs that were maybe a little different than that, but overall, it was another solo album in the same way. I think what I started recognizing towards the end of DTP is how the process that includes other people plays very directly into my own creative world. And by that, I mean, you've got a certain parameter that you are tied to by being in a rock band. And after being with people for a certain amount of time, you know what the skill set is, you know what you can expect, you know what you can and you can't do. And I just found myself starting to write music that was kind of outside of that rock band box. And the writing was on the wall then for me to sort of open up to other musicians and start a different process. But that process, once I started getting into it, became very closely tied to my personal, I guess, development or the ups and downs of midlife or what have you. And simply by unleashing that sort of creative potential, I found myself, it was a very, very difficult existential moment, I guess. And so this record took a lot of work, man. It was a crazy amount of work. And yes, on a technical level, it was a ton of work as well, clearly. But on an emotional and a personal level, there was a lot of change that happened during this. And I think that change is actually still going on as I sort of now start viewing it from a live perspective.
That's a really interesting point, man, because what you've said, that the latest record has opened you up creatively and sort of let you step outside the box, so to speak. I've always found that about your music, as far back as the Addicted album or Synkestra or anything like that. I never really felt like you've ever been in a box, to be honest.
Well, I think that if I can pat myself on the back for a second here, I think that any record that I put out, even if I felt like there were parameters that I was bumping up against, I always tried to make sure that the record was the best it could be. And Transcendence and Addicted and Synkestra and all these records that we're speaking of here were exactly where I needed to be at that point. Like, for sure. They were never, I don't feel at least that the majority of the music was phoning it in or struggling to get it out. I mean, All those things were exactly what I needed to do at that point. But within that realization, there's also an awareness of, okay, well, how far can we take this? You know, at what point will you be phoning it in? At what point will you be just bored of this? And I think that Transcendence was a great record for me, but also the very tail end of the creative juices that I had for that particular arrangement. I knew while I was making it, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get another one out of this. This is it, right? So, yeah, I think that they were all good for what they needed to be, but that awareness of needing to change is something that has been there since I changed strapping or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's really well said, man. And what I'm finding really interesting is that you've obviously got this acoustic solo project tour coming up in Australia where it's just you and an acoustic guitar. And it's kind of funny to me that you've just released your most orchestral album and you're following it up with a stripped back acoustic tour. Was this a conscious decision? How the fuck did that come about?
Well, there's two answers to it, I guess. Yeah, it's a conscious decision for sure. And I mean, the diplomatic way to explain it would be to say, the whole process of figuring out where I'm at this particular point in my life as an artist or a person or what have you, it was important for me to not only make Empath, but then strip it down to the brass tacks for live and then build it back up. So by the time I get to doing Empath in its entirety in Australia and anywhere else, I'll have sort of been able to go through all the musicians that I could possibly think could do this. I could weed out any of the problems that I feel I've had in the past and really hammer it home. And to bring it back to the beginning with just acoustic, I think is a surprising way to present this stuff, because people by and large leave these shows going, wow, the emotional impact of these songs is the same in a lot of ways, whether it's just with an acoustic guitar or with the orchestration, which has a lot to do with the fact that that's how I write it. Like, no matter how orchestrated this music is, its genesis is always just me and an acoustic guitar or an unamplified guitar in some way. And so it allows people to see things in its most primary form. And then the other less diplomatic answer is I'm just fucking beat after making Empath, dude. I was just like, it kicked my ass in every conceivable way. And the idea of having to go out again and put out a brand new band and get back out there and start playing, Kingdom or Deadhead or any of these things with, the visuals and all this stuff, I was just like, I'm just not ready to do that yet, man. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. I don't want the social engineering yet that goes into a whole new group of people. And I just didn't want to do it. So by doing the acoustic runs, it's allowed me not only to travel to some crazy places as well and see some really cool things, but also the people that show up to these shows, it's a pretty intimate show, and there's a question and answer thing. And a lot of times if you are really into what I do, it's a great way to kind of see the more inner workings of it. And by the time I do get back with the new band, and that's, I start touring with a new live thing in November in Europe, and then of course I'll be back down to Australia with that as well. By the time we're there, I'll have thought it through exactly the way that I want it to, and I'll have been able to think it through to avoid some of the problems that I felt I ran into with DTP and strapping, and I don't want to rush it, to be fair.
When you're making a set list for this kind of tour, obviously I can think back and I think of songs like Life or even Vampire. Like, there's a lot of songs that I can see working on the acoustic. Are you going for those obvious choices, or are you sort of throwing a few curveballs in there as well?
Oh, dude, it's all curveballs, really. I mean, and a lot of it is whatever people want to hear, too. I think that it's acoustic in that I'm playing an acoustic guitar, clearly. But I've got, a bunch of sounds and interesting things, and it's pulling from the entire catalog, Strapping or DTP or Ziltoid or Ghost or Casualties. I mean, all this stuff was written in a really similar way. And I think that what I find most, and what people have commented they find most surprising about this kind of acoustic show, it's the same kind of vibe. When I'm playing with an acoustic guitar with a small setup on stage, the vibe of a lot of these songs is not that far and away from the vibe of it with a band. Like you take a song like Deadhead or anything like that. It's a lot of that is the lyrical and vocal performance that makes that work. And whether or not you've got an acoustic guitar behind you or you've got a big band behind you, the impact of it is in my estimation, pretty similar, right?
Yeah, definitely. How many times have you toured here now? Because I remember a few years ago, it was you and Fear Factory, like leading the pack, and I think you've eclipsed them quite well recently.
Yeah, I've been to Australia. I've been to Australia a lot, and frankly, I can't wait to come back.
That's good, man.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's funny, dude. I'm at this point now where even now it's like trying to sell myself and do all this stuff. I'm not great at it, and I've had to learn over the past couple of years how to do it in a little bit more of a proactive way, right? So you're not just kind of, just feeling like you're full of shit when you're talking to people. But Australia's been good for me in a way because it's a culture that's not full of shit overall. So I can be a little more blunt. Yeah, I think with not only emotionally, but also I can kind of say what I feel, as opposed to having to wrap it up with some sort of gauze, some sort of salesman gauze. And maybe the fact that Canada and Australia are part of the Commonwealth or something, we've got that sort of link between us. But I've got a lot of friends there, and the shows are typically really a lot of fun there. And when I was doing the acoustic thing, I asked to come back down because I can only do this acoustic tour for a little while before I lose interest in it. And once it's done, I don't know if I'll do these sorts of things again. I think it's been really, really cool, but I just wanted it to be part of this empath cycle in a way that it's like, okay, it starts with acoustic, then goes to a more simple band. And then by the time I get to playing the full record, it's like, the elephants and gorillas and dancing girls or whatever. And you know what I mean? Yeah. But Australia, it's a place that I guess I've always related to, and I really enjoy going there.
Yeah, we've definitely got good bullshit detectors, Australians.
Yeah, I think that's a good trait culturally to hold on to, man.
Yeah. So when I first heard your music, it was about 2003, and I really got heavily into the self-titled album City, Accelerated Evolution as well, as far as SYL and then your solo music goes. And as someone with bipolar disorder, I've always identified with both sides of that coin within your music. And listening to your music in recent years, I still feel like it has that musical bipolarity. But I feel like the Devin of 2019 is a lot more balanced and content than the Devin who recorded Alien, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, God. Yeah, dude. The Devin who recorded Alien was a fucking nutball, man. But that being said, it's like the function of the work is to sort of get through those moments. If I did records like Alien or any of those ones that were completely fucked, Infinity or anything, and they came out of the other side just repeating that pattern over and over again, I would either be, in my opinion, like a masochist or just dumb. Yeah. My reasons for purging that is so I can figure it out and move on. So any progress that I've made as a person and any balance that I've got now is hard won. And those records are the essays that I wrote about it while I was in the throes of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
My goals have been, as a person and someone who struggles with, mental health or ups and downs or depression or mania or anything, my goals are to sort it out. My goals are not to wallow in it. My goals are not to, try and elicit some sort of sympathy from people for the sake that I keep repeating these toxic patterns to a similar end. So often when people say, hey, I really liked that record that you did back in the 90s, why don't you do that again? I was like, why the fuck would I want to do that again? it's like this is an album about recognizing how much it hurts to hit myself in the face with a hammer.
Yeah.
You know, and once that particular period of time is done, if I've done it correctly, the next record is not going to be about hitting myself in the face with a hammer. It's going to be the next thing in line of what is causing me some level of dysfunction.
Yeah.
So, you know, I now am relatively balanced, but it's not without significant fucking effort, man. You know, like every day, every aspect of meditation or exercise or, you know, falling off the wagon or getting back on the way, any of these things, man, like these are all things that my goals are set to try and be actualized in a way that I'm not compounding my life with self-imposed drama. And Empath was a significant step for me because it's the first time I sort of went back to the heavy stuff in a sense. You know, it's like, and I think up to this point, over the past 10 years at least, I think I've viewed the heavy part of my creative identity as being unhealthy in some way and almost like an imposter in my mind. But on Empath, I recognize that not only is it not that, but it's a part of me that if I just continue to fear, I'm never going to make that next step. You know, I'm never going to get on to what happens next in my creative lineage because I'm just terrified of a part of me that just needs attention more so than needs to be repressed. So Empath was significant for me, and the fear that went into making this record was significant for me because I consciously was like, okay, let's fucking deal with this, dude. Like, let's look at this again. And so when I finally do start touring with a new band next year, you know, there's a real solid chance it'll include strapping material. You know, it's been this process that has allowed me to kind of figure out who I am. And I'm it's a struggle, but I'm doing good.
That's great, man. And I know for me, you know, I'm a comedian, so creatively, I've learnt to ride the waves of my bipolar. So, you know, I know that sometimes I'm going to be out of action for a few days and sometimes I'm going to be bouncing off the fucking walls and unable to sleep and just ride into it. How much of that sort of learning to ride those waves do you think governs your creative process today?
I think riding the waves is inevitable because that's a skill set that I have incorporated. However, remembering that it's a wave is the biggest thing that I have to keep reminding myself of. You know, like, for example, today, dude, for the past 2 days, I've just been like fucked, like just super depressed. And then I remembered this afternoon, I'm like, dude, just go exercise. Like, just go exercise. As much as, you know, you don't want to do it, and as much as you are like having a hard time getting off the couch, go fucking exercise. And then I did. And then I was reminded that a lot of the dysfunction that I have claimed as being beyond my control is actually within my control. So it's a matter of remembering and fighting that. But a lot of why I feel I'm able to fight that now is because I'm not fighting my creative self in the ways that I have for the past 10 years. Dude, for 10 years now, I've not wanted to be heavy. I've not wanted to go into the dark parts of my personality because I thought they were an aberration. But with Empath, I chose to confront that. And as a result of that, now I'm able to remember, like, dude, all it takes for you to get your shit together is just to go exercise for a bit, you know. Brother, I gotta go, man. I got another interview now.
No worries, man. I really appreciate it, Dev. Thanks so much, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for all the years, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the Manic Noize podcast. I am Hayden Douglas, and that was Devin Townsend. And what an awesome dude, eh? So please, thank you for tuning in. Support Devin at his upcoming shows, and please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it. Cheers.
A virgin birth and Jesus turning water into wine, prophetic and divine, or a pathetic lie. 3 days buried and he's back from the dead. If we all came from Noah, I guess that we're all inbred. Well, I gotta call bullshit on that. The science does not back your purported facts. Got SpaceX ready to jet and colonize Mars. I don't need your book to comprehend the fucking stars. I'm than the speed of light. Shotgun brought into a knife fight. When I'm in a downward spiral, I'm fucking miserable. Now I'm on the upswing, I am invincible. Don't panic, I'm a little bit manic, charismatic and erratic, ecstatic for the mania. Satanic, I'm addicted to the rush, I'm just a little bit manic. Don't panic, I'm a little bit manic, charismatic and erratic, ecstatic for the mania. I'm just a little bit manic. I'm just a little bit manic. Self-doubt can get fucked and leave with his throat cut, wrapped up in a shit rug, chucked into a dump truck, locked up, beaten and broken. If you think you're getting back into my head, you're joking. Messed up but not corrupt at the core, bipolar as fuck, it's tough to hold on. Been a slave and a victim, too self-doubt and religious, stressed about death when I should have been living. I'm faster than the speed of light. Shotgun brought into a knife fight. When I'm in a downward spiral, I'm fucking miserable. Now I'm on the upswing, I am invincible. Don't panic, I'm just a bit manic, charismatic, erratic, ecstatic for the fucking mania. Satanic, I'm addicted to the rush, I'm just a little bit manic.